Welcome to the Real Estate 401k Show. Here are your hosts, Ryan Gertis, Mike Weinstein, and Justin Frederick, helping you build a legacy of wealth through real estate. Powered by the Recon Group at West USA and the Frederick team with Fairway Mortgage. NMLS number 625918.
You know, we always say, always consider your source of information. And sometimes there is no source and we have no idea how and why decisions are made. But I was working with a buyer, years ago, and we kept talking about how you need to get pre-qualified, get all excited about buying a house, talk about building wealth in real estate. And then finally, it got them to the point they were willing to talk to a lender. This was prior to you, Justin, so don't get all butthurt.
No.
This was
He's sensitive, so break it down, brother.
But it turned out prior to talking to the lender, this particular buyer, this client of mine, got a free credit report, saw a couple, outstanding medical bills that were 5 or 6 years old, and before ever talking to the lender, took it upon themselves to do the right thing and start paying all of this stuff off, thinking that, one, they're doing the right thing, thinking that, two, that was going to put them in a better position to buy a house. Couldn't have been any worse of a decision because it set them back for years.
You know, with collections, it's funny that the way that the credit bureaus grade paying off collections. So what we tell individuals that have medical collections is you need to call either the collection company or the originator of the medical bill itself and have a conversation with them and say, I'm willing to pay this, but you got to be willing to delete it from my credit report. If they don't delete it, don't pay it because it doesn't help you. It doesn't give you any better of a credit score, not even a point. But if they delete it, it can make a dramatic difference in your credit score.
And don't delinquencies, they stay on your credit report for X amount of time, right? And then if you're 1 year away from this thing dropping off and then you pay it and then it shows paid, doesn't it stay on your credit report even longer?
No, not necessarily. However, there's a way that they can transfer the collection to another collection agency, and then it will remain open for that period of time all over again. It restarts the whole thing. So there's ways that these collectors can work the system. They find loopholes in order to keep that derogatory credit account with you. So yeah, that's it's an unfortunate part of credit.
A nasty business.
It's nasty.
So yeah, you got to do more than just pay these things off. You got to get them deleted, or else basically there's going to be zero effect on the credit.
And you want to make sure that you obtain the deletion letter. Most of these calls through collection agencies, they are called or they're recorded. But if you don't remember your confirmation number, it's going to be hard for them to dig up your phone call. So you want to get that deletion letter so that you can turn it into your lender so that they can either do a rapid rescore or make sure that it was removed when we're pulling a new credit report. Yeah.
So in your experience, what's the biggest differentiator? What's the biggest thing that someone can do? Like when it comes to repairing credit,
yeah,
right? And you see someone, oh man, they've had X, Y, or Z, and they're in the low 500s. What is typically the top thing that they can do to bounce back at the highest rate?
You know, when you're in the high 500s, you have multiple issues. But I would say the biggest thing is making sure your credit card balances are at their lowest point. Don't pay them all the way off. People think that paying them all the way off is going to benefit you. In reality, having even a dollar balance on that most likely will be better than paying it completely off with some of these bureaus. Something I want to just bring up that a lot of people, when they're moving or when they're renting and they had APS or a Cox, one of the biggest killers that we see is...
And for people outside of Arizona, that's our cable company and utility company.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah. We find that a lot of Cox collections hit people's accounts. And that's one that's we've found is ultimately impossible to get removed or deleted from your credit report. And it's just the closeout of the account. So make sure you're closing out those accounts before you're moving on.
Well, I think at the end of the day, and I think the point that I'm trying to make is, buying a house is obviously one of the most biggest purchases you're ever going to make in your life. If you are not a loan officer, you are not a loan officer. You don't know. And oftentimes we take a look at these free credit reports and we make decisions based on maybe what somebody else advises us to do who are not loan officers, or we Google it, or what. Or Ryan, you brought up earlier AI. AI is not a loan officer. ChatGPT, last time I checked, does not have a license number, right? How important is it before, pull the credit report, that's fine. But before you do anything, you have to have a strategy. You have to know what to pay down, what to leave alone. If credit card debt, how much to pay this credit card debt down to? Because sometimes you're hurting yourself, and sometimes you're spending more money than you need it to.
Yeah, and we have tools, and I feel like a lot of our consumers out there think that it's going to cost them money to have this conversation, or they're embarrassed about what their credit says. But we have to start somewhere, and with us, it's important for us to use these tools. We have a simulator. And basically, let's say that you had $4,000 that you want to apply to something within your credit. We can run a simulator with that amount of money and tell you where to apply each one of these payments and how much to apply to each one of these accounts to maximize your credit score with the amount of money that you have. And it will tell us immediate response to your credit score. It will tell us what it would be in 12 months. We can really dial this in based on what your plan is, and we can make a plan for you based on the amount of money you have and the time that you're wanting to put in place. Our timeline may be longer than what you're expecting, but at least you have a plan and you know what actions you have to take in order to get there and achieve your goals.
Remember back in the day,
when he gets that grin, I get worried.
Back in the early 2000s, and it was just like, hey, your credit score is at 672. Your decision credit score is 672, and you're like, well, how do I get it to 680 where I'm gonna get that extra bump up in interest or bump less adjustment in interest rate, and they're like, well, we think that if you go over here, we like to see this under 20%, under 20%. We like to see that over there. This collection over here, we could, maybe that'll do it. We'll pay that off and see how that does it for you. And so there was a lot of educated guesses, right? It was okay.
Experienced guesses.
Yeah, experienced guesses. And so it was really just okay, you signed on the dotted line somewhere once upon a time that you were going to pay this person this or this company this money, and you didn't. And so basically we're just kind of mitigating as much loss as possible, how much we should pay them back. And now they got it down to a science, literally just putting it in there and saying, hey, look, this is the amount of money that you need to pay towards this, and then here's what your credit score is going to do, down to the point, right? So, I mean, what do you see as far as the future goes? The way that they're going to approach credit, and because we're already seeing trends like we had talked about the other day. It used to be you had your high, middle, and your low, and your middle was your decision score, and now they're starting to say that you can blend with another borrower and do an average. Talk to us a little bit about that and what possible trends we see in the future as it pertains to credit and what people can do to strategize on that front.
Well, we've already seen technology get a lot better with credit. We've seen some of these, let's say your credit card companies that give you your score. I've seen some of them where they're allowing consumers to say, let's say I make this change, and it'll tell you this is the adjustment you may see. They're never 100% accurate. But they're pretty close. So I'm hoping that they do make this to where a consumer can jump on some sort of app or some sort of credit simulator themselves and really see what it can do. Because I feel like if an average person has the ability to do this on a daily basis, they're really going to start paying attention to what affects your credit, what makes it better, what makes it worse.
Yeah.
Because we could do the same thing. We could say, okay, if you added $100 to this balance, your credit's going to go down 20 points.
Yeah, but there's usually like a story behind most of those things, right? Because you guys don't just take that information, plug it in. You put a little bit of narrative behind it, like just a handful of questions that you're asking the consumer, right?
No, not typically. We're just taking their credit report and playing with the simulator.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like a doctor looking at X-rays. He's looking at an X-ray. Doesn't matter how the bone's broken. Bone's broken. So let's figure out how to fix it.
Correct. And so based on what that play looks like, and based on what the consumer has as far as the ability to pay things down or call companies, we're making the plan based on how many points we need to get to in the future.
So sum it up. What are some of the common mistakes we are making to take matters into our own hands to fix our credit?
Well, I think a big misconception is a lot of times people think that they need to pay down a certain card, but they increase the balances on other cards. So that's a big deal. You don't want to increase balances on other cards because that still hurts your credit utilization. I feel like, again, the small Cox bills, the medical bills. A lot of times we don't know about these too, because the Cox bill, if you're moving, a lot of times they don't get the forwarding address. But I would make sure you call those companies and get that bill taken care of. Find out if there's any remaining balances. Make sure the account's closed, because a lot of times those bills are $40, $50, and it's absolutely destroying their credit.
Oh.
Yeah, I remember when I bought my first house, I had this was like 1998 or something like that. I had 3 derogatory items popped up on my credit report, and my loan officer, again, before we knew each other, so don't get all butthurt. I don't even think you were a loan officer at the time. I think you were still in diapers. But
you just aged yourself.
But so the loan officer said, okay, you got to call these 3 creditors. You got to, in exchange for paying them the money, you got to get that letter saying that they're going to release it. First one, no problem. Second one, no problem. The third one was Wells Fargo. And I went in there, and it was like I owed them like $80.
Mm-hmm.
And they pretty much said, we don't care about your $80. Mm-hmm. It's not worth the time.
In some of these cases, you have people that have a 30-day late, and they have a good reason that it wasn't late. So I would tell people, call them no matter what, and keep in mind you're speaking with human beings on the phone. If somebody tells you no, call back and try to get a different human being on the phone to try to get that yes answer, to get the 30-day lates removed, or possibly the deletion letter. It's funny how certain people want to help you and others don't. So don't take the first person's no.
That's good advice.
As end all be all. Work for that credit score. Make sure that you're doing these. We're talking about a phone call, and maybe let's say max 2 hours of your time
but worth it.
But worth it, because you're talking about a difference in closing costs and a monthly payment that is over 30 years. This can make a big difference.
All right, well, that is Justin Frederick from the Frederick team at Fairway Independent Mortgage, our resident mortgage expert. And if you are thinking about buying a home, you're thinking about investing, and you're taking a look at your credit report or want somebody to take a look at your credit report, you need that strategy. Do not make any decisions without talking to an expert like Justin. So all you got to do is text the word money to 623-AZ-RECON. We're going to introduce you to Justin and his team, and they will go over all of these strategies with you. Again, text the word money to 623-AZ-RECON.
Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate 401k Show. If you want more information on how to build wealth, click on the link or text us at 623-297-3266. That's 623-AZ-RECON.